the Gould Mine podcast.
It's a weird time, Mark. What is it? What is it? And are we praying for a bailout that's never going to happen? And if it never happens, then what are the ramifications?
Yes. Our strongest years in the lending business and for everybody was 2020 and 2021. Almost all these deals were set on 5 years, whether you went through a bank or credit union. So you add 5 years to that, you're talking about 25 and 26. That's where I think you're exactly right. People have been praying for lower rates. And if you own a aging office park that's pretty big in the suburbs, and there's lots of them, you need to come up with a lot of money or figure out how to convert these into smaller units, convert them into residential, convert them into retail lifestyle centers. But there's just a lot of properties that don't make financial sense. And I think it's going to not make financial sense for the next 10 to 20 years. Okay. Because the idea that we're going to have all these, companies of a few hundred people and they're going to take 2 floors of a suburban office park, they're dead. If you're a fintech company in the startups, you see it out there in Silicon Valley. You used to take up, as you grew, you just kept leasing up this space and leasing up this space. Yeah. It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen anymore. And, there's all the warehouses and storage facilities. They're really good prospects, but they're a little bit less profitable. You got to find the big places to lease them up. And it is going to just be an inherent flaw in our business for quite some time. And you'll see institutions fail over it or get merged up. And it's an unfortunate side effect of the shift that we've seen in the workforce. And we have, I could tell stories for hours on how much money I saw printed through the COVID and the PPP loan process and the massive amount of investments that happened as a result. And that's really spurned this we have an inflationary environment, which even if inflation settles down, we're not going into a deflationary environment. If we go into a deflationary environment, look out, because then a lot of things really went wrong. But much of that inflationary environment was caused by increases in people's salaries. Mm-hmm. And, you could work at the convenience store and Chick-fil-A and you're making $17 an hour now.
Yeah, it's crazy,
We're not
right?
going back to the days where they're making $9 or $10 an hour. And if we do, that's a death spiral for the American economy because all that money is out of the system. So I think it's just going to be a very slow process as people's salaries start to normalize and get those rates ahead of inflation to where it's going to be a very slow, stagnant environment for a few years. And I wish that wasn't the case, but we have to pay the piper for this inflationary environment and having the money work through the system. And some of it's going to be having less supply of real estate. In Detroit, when they didn't need the housing, they just took massive areas and imploded them over and have less supply. And unfortunately, that may be a solution here as well, is less supply is needed.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, especially in some of the sectors that are really struggling, AKA office, right? Like we've been talking about a lot of that. You haven't necessarily like called it out specifically, but like when I'm hearing you talk, it's like definitely, that's the sector that's hurting the most. And at the end of the day, Mark, I mean, not to be all doom and gloom, right? Because there is light. I'm a serial optimist. I guess that's the curse of being an entrepreneur, is you always see the glass half full. What I heard you say earlier was like, look, there are going to be people who, inherently are able to seize this opportunity. And this happens every cycle, right? There's always an opportunistic period. And so, like end on a slightly more positive note, like there are opportunities out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are going to be. And also like thinking about it too, like you talking about, hey, what else can we do with these properties that like, what kind of conversions can we do? Let's put our creativity hat on and really think like outside the box.
Yeah. And I think one of the items in this country is we have an inherent lack of housing in this country. It's an upside down model that needs to be fixed. So there are housing units and places that people need to live. That needs to come online. There's retail centers that, can be built up. There's, and we will have, I think, things like the AI revolution will hurt a little bit in that there's some automation, but I also think you'll see a little bit of a flattening out in the country in terms of population. We've really had a big rush of population. You're in one of them, California. People they going where the jobs are. They're going to Texas. They're going to Florida. Well, now those places, the economics aren't as good, or you can work in Boise, Idaho, and for a company in California. So we're starting to see places max out. We're seeing population shift out, and as long as people have jobs in this country, we'll get through it.
Yep,
I really believe that, and I think we have the outlook for our unemployment rate and income rates are good. And over that, it'll just be a little bit of a time and to take some creative people to put the money in to fix up some of these properties.
Mark, we're coming up on time here, and I want to be respectful of your time. But in traditional Gould Mine fashion, we have every guest leave the audience with one final gold nugget. So, Mark, one final gold nugget for the audience. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. I'm a big believer in hitting singles and doubles in your world. Everybody wants the home runs.
Yep.
But you really never go wrong hitting singles and doubles and solid, and also staying in segments that you understand. You can Google up a lot of fads, you can Google up a lot of trends, but really, if you have segments and marketplaces that you understand in this world and can get your hands on, that's the way to go. So stay in those industries, stay in those marketplaces. And if you don't know, spend the time to go research, handhold. Don't just use the internet as your way to say, oh, that looks good. I read an article about Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm good. So,
yeah. Love it. Singles and doubles. That's not a bad strategy, man. You just got to get on base, baby.
Yes.